Hello everyone. The company Meeden reached out to me again to see if we could have another collaboration, and they sent me their fluid acrylic paint as well as some wooden panels to paint on. I specifically picked the fluid acrylic paints because I've been painting with another brand of fluid acrylics and I really enjoy them. And I've been enjoying painting on wood panels. So they sent me this one, which is actually thicker than what I'm used to. It's 1.5 inches thick, and they're 8 by 8 inches, and there's 4 of them. There's one that I already prepped. I put about 3 layers of gesso on it, because you can't just put the paint on it. It's gonna just sink in. So you need to prepare your wood surface with gesso. And then the acrylic set is a set of basic colors, so primary colors. There are 2-ounce bottles, 6 of them. Not only are they basic colors, but it's a very basic packaging as well. You do see the pigment numbers, the light fast rating, as well as the transparency on each bottle. So there's a scarlet red, a Mars black, cerulean blue, a mid green, a mid yellow, and a titanium white. So far, I think it's a nice basic set of colors, which is great. So I decided to pour all the colors on the palette, and right away I realized that they are not as fluid as what I'm used to. They come out of the bottle a little slower, they're more viscous. So I quickly did some swatches just to get a feel, not to get the colors, because you can see what they look like on the palette. You actually can see what they look like in the bottle because the bottles are transparent. You can see through them the actual paint. I really like all those pigments. I think they're very pretty. And later on, and I don't show it on the camera, but I did some mixes to see if I could get a variety of colors, and I do. So I think this set of colors is actually pretty good. Now, doing the swatches, I realized that the colors seemed a bit transparent, especially the green, but the green is always a transparent color, it seems like. But anyways, so for my painting, I decided to use a technique that I learned from following the tutorials that the artist Acrylic offers. I'm not very comfortable still with acrylic paint, although I'm getting much better now with their properties. But I've been following Acrylic's tutorials for a while, and they're actually really nice because she basically has a formula. She follows the same steps every time for each painting. And I think for a beginner with acrylics, it's very comforting because you know where to start. You don't stand in front of your blank canvas wondering what you should be doing. So I did my own painting, but following her step by step, basically, if that makes sense. At first, you start building the values with more diluted paint. And I quite like those fluid paints diluted with water for my first layers. I think it worked very well. So as I built the values, I added less and less water to have my paint be darker and darker. Once I was done with the values, I worked on the underpainting, so a colorful layer as a base of colors. I was not quite happy with that first red on the top left for the background, so I turned it into a more orange color, and I used it pretty diluted as well to cover up all the background and the leaves. And then I used a diluted blue for the flowers themselves. And then once these 2 steps, the values and then the underpainting, once those 2 steps are completed, it's time to add the actual local colors. And that's when things started getting tricky, because while I mentioned that the fluid paint was not as fluid as what I'm used to, they seem like they're more transparent. And I had a hard time loading up my brush to paint a good amount of strokes. I had to load my brush way more often than I'm used to. So I get used to the fact that acrylic paint is not super opaque compared to, let's say, gouache or oil. And I get that you just have to build layers and go at it, several times. But with this paint, I had to paint quite a few layers. And I get pretty frustrated with this. But I can deal with this. It's fine. Just keep on adding layers. What I had a hard time with is that it felt like the paint was sticky, I guess. And so it was hard to spread on the surface. And it also didn't dry as fast as a regular acrylic paint that I've used. It was very strange. I had to wait quite a while before I added a second layer because it would remove a good amount of my first layer. And I've experienced that before, but not to that extent. So while I was struggling using the paint, and it was not like getting the right colors or mixes, because I was able to mix some nice colors with this selection that comes in with the set. But I was struggling with the application of the paint on the surface. So much so that I totally forgot the style that I wanted to use for this painting. I was supposed to let the underpainting shine through. And halfway through, I realized that I didn't in most places because I was just fighting with the paint. But I was determined to make it work, so I kept working with it. At some point, I took a break, and several hours later, I went back to the painting. And usually with any acrylic paint that I've used so far, any brand, I would be able to just peel off the paint blobs on my palette really easily. It's a ceramic tile, so it's very sleek, so acrylic comes off very easily when it's all dry, especially a thicker amount of paint. But in this case, it didn't work because I think the paint was not fully dry. It was like some kind of weird pasty texture. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if it's because of the recipe of the paint, I'm not sure, but I had a hard time. But anyway, I kept working and did all the preliminary layers that I could do until I got so frustrated that I decided to just stop using the paint. I did take another 3 days break before I cleaned my palette, and at this point, the paint was spilling a little bit better, but definitely not as easy as what I'm used to. But at least this time you can see that it's a little stretchy. It's supposed to be like a layer of plastic, almost like latex, but it came off much easier. It was much easier to clean up that palette this time. To me, painting is supposed to be a fun process, supposed to enjoy it. Sometimes you do get frustrated because you don't get the result you want. And there's always an ugly face to your painting, so you always wonder if it's gonna turn out okay in the end. But most of the time, I think you should enjoy the process. And I was fighting with the paint and I didn't like it. So I decided to clean my palette and then use the other brand that I usually use. So of course, because I used my other brand, I had a wider range of colors to use. I still made a lot of mixes, but right away just putting the paint on the surface, it was just gliding. There was no resistance. And I didn't have to reload my brush as often. You can still see there is some transparency, and it all depends on the colors you use, really. But after a couple layers, you can also see how much brighter it got. So at this point, I really started enjoying the painting process a bit more. I had to improvise the style because by then, the style that I was using, which was taught by Ali Kay, was a bit, it was too late for it. I had messed it up already. But, you know, it was fun to just improvise and have fun. Now, I want to say something. This set of 6 2-ounce bottles is very, very affordable. The whole set is basically the price of a 1-ounce bottle by the other brand that I'm using. So I can understand the difference in quality. It's such a difference in price. And I think the main difference really is the amount of pigments in each bottle. And the Meeden paint is not as pigmented, and that's why it's so transparent, and that's why you have to build so many layers. I'm wondering if on paper it might be easier to use. You can also use it diluted more like watercolors. I quite enjoyed using it like that when I did my first couple layers. But for the way I'm used to using fluid acrylics, it didn't work out for me. Just a quick word on the wood panel. It's actually very lovely. Like I said, you do have to prep it, so a few layers of gesso before you start painting on it is required. You can slightly sand it down before you start painting if you want a smoother surface, which I did. And it's a lot of fun to paint on. I like it better than using a canvas. I'm not super fond of the texture of a canvas unless it's very, very fine. So I really like those panels. Well, that's about it for now. I'm sure you can find a good use for this paint. Maybe for crafts. The colors are great. I really did like this selection of colors, but they made me a bit too frustrated so for the way I use acrylic paint, at least. So I do thank Meeden for sending me this set to try, as well as the wood panels. I did end up having fun, and I think the painting turned out okay in the end. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you all for stopping by. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon with another video. Bye bye.